Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Perkins V Special Populations What's on the Horizon webinar. This is Amy Julian, and I'm with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University. So welcome to everyone. All attendees are in listen-only mode as we start this morning. If you do have questions, please feel free to raise your hand or post those in the question pane, and we'll be able to address those questions as we go. And with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. So welcome. So I want to tell you a little bit about the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. We create, support, deliver professional development for career and technical education and adult education professionals across Illinois. We provide technical assistance, we develop publications, facilitate program improvement strategies for all of our partners as they relate to college transition, recruitment, retention, completion, along the way encouraging the achievement of special populations. So we're very excited today to be talking about what Perkins V has in store for us regarding special populations. I'd like to introduce you to my team. These are the individuals who work at ICSPS: Casey Anderson, Nikki Michalak, Brittany Boston, and Connie Borowski. And those of you who know them know that they love that I am showing their picture right now this morning. So the special population learners up until this point, so honestly since 1984 till today, have been single parents, pregnant and parenting teens, displaced homemakers, individuals with disabilities, both cognitive and physical, English language learners, economically disadvantaged students, and then students pursuing non-traditional occupations for their gender. And so that is really where we started, and that is where we kind of maintained ourselves for quite some time. We, as a Congress and all the different reauthorizations, because we are on the 5th one, didn't really talk about how or changing those special populations. So that's really what's exciting with Perkins V is there is a change in special populations definitions, and there's also kind of a leveraging of the importance of special populations. So it's a really exciting time. I want to first kind of tell you a little bit about some upcoming professional development, because if I don't, I tend to forget. And so I want to just let you be aware of some things that are coming up. We have a team teaching model webinar that is on March 28th, and that will be at 10 a.m. on this same platform. We have an ICAPs Model 1 in the field webinar, which is ICAPs IET models. So if you are not familiar with those are something that are really important to start looking at. Oh, you all can't see my screen. Well, then that's a problem. Okay, so we're going to start over again. Good morning. This is Amy Julian. I'm the director for the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. As I said before, everyone's in listening only mode. Possibly if you were able to talk, we wouldn't have had that issue. And we're going to be talking about Perkins V and special populations and what is on the horizon. So you can see everything. I'm sorry, guys. I'm using a new computer, and that's what the issue is. Hopefully that is what you're looking at correctly now. Yes? If not, then my notes, I have no notes that I ever speak with. So you're going to be excited to see the no notes. All right. Okay, so good morning. My name is Amy Julian, and we're going to be talking about, again, special populations and what's on the horizon. So we'll get through those. Thank you all for your comments, because otherwise I did not realize that we were having that issue. So ICSPS, Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support, we create, support, deliver professional development, technical assistance for career and technical education, adult education across the state. We provide technical assistance, develop publications, facilitate program improvement strategies for our partners as they relate to college transition, recruitment, retention, and completion, all along the way encouraging the achievement of special populations learners. This is probably where you realize you couldn't see my team. Here is the individuals that are in my team: Casey Anderson, Nikki Michalak, Brittany Boston, and Connie Borowski. So those are all individuals who are part of ICSPS. We also have a new Martha Smith is with us as well, and she has not allowed us to take her picture, so I'll have to get that added. as I was saying, up until this reauthorization, so up until the 2018 reauthorization, the special populations have really remained the same. The only big change was in 1998 when they removed academically disadvantaged, because they felt that No Child Left Behind was going to remedy all of those issues with academically disadvantaged. So the special populations that currently exist are single parents, pregnant and parenting teens, displaced homemakers, individuals with disabilities, both cognitive and physical, English language learners, economically disadvantaged, and then students pursuing non-traditional occupations for their gender. The reason I want to kind of start here is to let you be aware that this is where they started when they're looking at Perkins V, and now we've kind of expanded those. So it's a really exciting time to look at the expansion of special populations. It's also a really exciting time to notice that we have expanded and become a purpose within the law for the first time ever. I do want to share with you a couple things for spring professional development. There is much more on our website, but I want to make you aware of a couple items that are coming up. So we have Team Teaching Model webinar, which is March 28th. There is an ICAPs Model 1 in the field webinar, which is going to be April 11th. FY19 Perkins Administrator Cohort Spring Meeting is April 16th, and that is from 10 to 3 in Springfield. And then the Illinois Transitions Academy Spring Session is going to take place on the 17th, the next day, and that is going to talk about a lot of those things that tie into both adult education and career and technical education related to those ICAPs models. So I do encourage everyone to stay for that. The last one I have on there is a Programs of Study webinar that is going to take place on April 18th. So that will take place on April 18th. Sorry about that. Okay, now everything just locked up. Okay, so we're going to talk now about Perkins V, the strengthening of the Act and what's going on with the Act. So the purpose of the Act is to develop a more fully academic knowledge and technical and employability skills for secondary students and post-secondary education students who elect to enroll in career and technical education. A lot of these things are duplicative from the first point and from the points that we have had prior to in Perkins 1 through 4. But so I'm going to share a little bit of those with you. So building on the efforts of the states and localities to develop challenge academic technical standards, promoting the development of service and activities that integrate academic, career, and technical education instruction and that information, increasing state and local flexibility in providing services and activities designed to develop and implement and improve CTE, disseminating national research, that has been one for quite some time, conducting technical assistance that promotes leadership. Sorry, we're experiencing some technical difficulties here. And then providing individuals with opportunities and skills to keep the U.S. competitive. This is the big one. That's why that's in orange up there for you. This is the first time that really populations that are considered special populations are actually mentioned in the law. So increasing the employment opportunities for the populations who are chronically unemployed or underemployed, including individuals with disabilities, individuals from economically disadvantaged families, out-of-work individuals, youth who are in or have aged out of foster care system, and homeless individuals. Now, those of you who live and breathe special populations in Perkins have noticed that in that little purpose, those are naming some special populations that we haven't had before. So not only is it an exciting time because for the first time, the support of special populations is actually listed as a purpose of the law. It is also a special and exciting time because we have expanded that list of special populations. So it's very exciting, for lack of a better way to say that. The other exciting thing that's going on is that we're going to see a little bit more focus on equity. We're seeing a little bit more focus on universal design and some other fun things. So let's get into the exploring part here. So what's new and what has stayed the same within special populations? Individuals with disabilities remains unchanged. We are still having, as a special population, individuals with disabilities that are both cognitive and physical disabilities. So that's going to remain unchanged. The non-traditional fields has a slight addition of examples of definitions, and there are some changes to the core indicators that we'll get back to in a little bit. But for the most part, the idea of non-traditional occupations is now transitioned into non-traditional fields, and really has remained that still that 25% of any occupation that is represented, 25% or less within a single occupation of a particular gender. Displaced homemakers is out. So the idea of displaced homemakers that has been around, and honestly, a lot of us felt that that was a little outdated at times. That is something that is now out of work individuals. So we're going to look at that. The term of out of work individuals, and what does that mean? So the term out of work individual is actually an individual who is a displaced homemaker. So they couldn't really break completely with that term. So they left displaced homemaker in there as defined in Section 3 of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. It's an individual who has worked primarily without remuneration to care for home and family, and for that reason has a diminished marketable skill. It is a parent whose youngest dependent child who will become ineligible to receive assistance under Part A of Title 4 of the Social Security Act. I'm not going to read all that. No later than 2 years after the date in which the parent applies for assistance under such title. And it is an individual who is unemployed or underemployed and experiencing difficulty in obtaining or upgrading employment. So it does broaden that definition for the first time and does change the language of that definition, which is pretty exciting and for Congress to address those. Back to the list, LEP is changed to English learner. So for a long time, if you've worked in different circles of education, we have had limited English proficient, which is LEP. We have had ESL, English as a second language. We have had all these different categories depending on if you looked at ESSA or adult education or WIA. Perkins has now changed that to English learner. So anyone who is limited English proficient, or as defined here, a secondary student who is an English learner as defined in Section 8101 of the ESSA, an adult who is out of school youth or has limited ability to speak, read, write, or understand English, and whose native language is a language other than English and who lives in a family environment in which a language other than English is the dominant language. So that is how we're defining English learner within the law, and that is the new definition for that. Economically disadvantaged is modified to include low-income youth and adults, so that is just a slight modification there. And then single parents and pregnant and parenting teens remains unchanged. What's new? We have homeless youth who are in or have aged out of the foster care system is something that is new. And then in addition to that, youth with an active military background, or sorry, with an active military parent is added to the special populations. I want to pause there and see if there are any questions, if anyone has any questions before we get into some other fun highlights of equity. Any questions at all? Okay, we're going to continue to move along then. So other fun highlights. So really you have a change there. You have a transition within the definition of special populations, and we're going to talk a little bit about how special populations does impact that. Oh, we do have one question. So when does this change go into effect? The change goes into effect as Perkins V is implemented. So with all the other changes of Perkins V, that's when that will go into effect. So this next year will be a transition year, and then Perkins V will take full effect within the following year. Any other questions? Okay, so universal design is something that has been around within the area of equity for quite some time, but it's actually mentioned in the law, which is exciting. The term universal design for learning means a scientifically valid framework for guiding educational practice. It provides flexible ways in which information is presented, in the way students respond to demonstrate knowledge and skills, and in the ways that students are engaged. We're going to have a lot of professional development around universal design and how to incorporate universal design into your classrooms, because it is something that can really stand on its own. In addition, it reduces barriers to instructions, provides appropriate accommodations for support, challenges, and maintains high achievement expectations for all students, including students with disabilities or who are limited English proficient. So, as I said, the idea of universal design is one that has been around for some time. It is exciting that it is mentioned in the law, and it is something that our center is preparing and well positioned to assist you with. If you have questions about universal design, do look for that in upcoming professional development. Okay. Fund highlights also that impact equity. We have an increased fund for serving individuals, states, institutions from 1% to 2%. So what that means is the juvenile justice system has always received the 1%, and that is something that if you've been to any of the road shows or have seen any of the work that's been done around Perkins V rollout, this is something that's been talked about, as well as pretty much everything else that I've been talking about. It adds an educational modification to the descriptor of the institution that serves students with disabilities, so that's exciting, more inclusive. But at the same time, the big change there is that you have an increased fund for serving those institutions from 1% to 2%. It changes the state leadership set aside for non-traditional from service to assist eligible recipients in providing service. So that is a distinct change that is addressed in the law. In addition to that, it adds a set aside for recruiting special populations to enroll in CTE of less than 0.1% of the state leadership funds, or $50,000, whichever is less. So this is a floor of the amount of the funds that can be used for the purpose, and that is something that has been covered and is will be addressed within the state plan. But that is something new within the federal law, saying that there's that opportunity, or there's the floor set, which has not been set since the 1990 legislation, when there actually were set-asides and line items for each of the special populations. So this is something that actually rolls back to the way of thinking that special populations do need some allocated funds to accompany their purposes. It changes the non-traditional measure at the secondary and post-secondary level to the percentage of CTE concentrators in career and technical education programs and programs of study that lead to a non-traditional field. And it does repeal the requirement for states to negotiate performance measures with the Secretary, or the U.S. Department of Education Secretary, and allow states to set their own measures and include them in their state plan. So this is something, again, if you've listened to the Whitney and Marcy Roadshow, if you're not aware, there is a webinar that is coming up very soon, and I'm trying to find the date on that. I'll get back to you on that one. The webinar that's coming up on Perkins V and rolling out with Perkins V as well. So I'll share that in just a little bit. One of the things that is defined within Perkins V, which has not been defined before, is the CTE concentrator. Prior to this, that was something that was defined by each state. And so what we're looking at now is the ability to have that defined for the states within the legislation. And so a CTE concentrator is, at the secondary school level, a student served by an eligible recipient who has completed at least 2 courses in a single career and technical education program or program of study. And at the post-secondary level is a student enrolled in an eligible recipient who has earned at least 12 credit hours within CTE program or program of study and completed such a program if the program encompasses fewer than 12 credits or the equivalent in total. So these are some fun things. Again, they do touch on equity and they are fairly important. And I did want to let you know that, just let you know that these existed. So required uses of funds. One of the things that is retained is providing preparation for non-traditional fields in current and emerging professions and other activities, and expose students, including special populations, to high skill, high wage, and in-demand occupations. That's kind of a word change from the last law. Serving individuals in the state's institutions, such as state correctional institutions, including juvenile justice facilities and educational institutions that serve individuals with disabilities. Also included for required uses of funds is the recruiting, preparing, and retaining CTE teachers, faculty, specialized instruction, support personnel, paraprofessionals, and professional development leadership programs. In addition, technical assistance, and then report on effectiveness of funds in reducing disparities and performance gaps. Two other ones are also required uses of funds, and the reason why the required uses of funds are important is because there are not permissible. With this law, as I'm sure you've heard by now, with this law, the required uses of funds are rolled in, the permissible uses of funds are rolled into the required uses of funds. So introductory courses or activities focus on career exploration, career awareness, including non-traditional fields to students, including their middle grades. And then any other activity that advances knowledge or career opportunities as assists students in making informed decisions about future education and employment goals, including non-traditional fields. Not going to read all these to you, but provide professional development for teachers, principals, school leaders, administrators, and then it has, again, that lower framework that really supports the previous use of permissible uses of funds. Plan and carry out elements that support implementation of programs of study. So programs of study do not go away within Perkins V, and that is really something that's important. And we are working to really support the system in their development and maintenance of programs of study. Because if you look there, it does also say that we're going to support reduce elimination of expenses for special populations participating in CTE, including those participating in dual or concurrent enrollment, talking about the idea of supporting costs associated with fees, transportation, childcare, mobility, and that's going to be interesting to see how that works within local uses of funds. And then develop, implement, an evaluation of activities carried out with these funds under the part, including evaluation necessary to complete comprehensive needs assessment. And that is something that is going to be part of Perkins V that has not been included before, is that comprehensive needs assessment. And again, if you have been really following or attending those listening sessions and the webinars around Perkins V, there's tons of resources on both the Illinois Community College Board website and the Illinois State Board of Education on how the state is proposing or considering looking at and working under that needs assessment for the local reports. So just a couple notes that I want to go over prior to opening up the floor for questions. There's no permissible use of funds, and that is something that is pretty evident when this was rolled out, and it's pretty evident as we're looking through the planning. But there are a more distinct understanding of the required uses of funds. And the required use of funds has also been expanded, as you can tell, because we just walked through those. There is an allowing for pooling of funds to implement programs of study, which is exciting. And then there is the administrative cost capped at 5%, which is similar into the current law. So that is something that has been with Perkins and actually most federal laws for as long as I've been around, so at least since the 80s. And you're looking at, I don't see that changing. So with that, I'm going to look here and see if anybody has questions. Post those in the question pane or in the chat box. So the question is, a couple of you have this, what does it mean to pool funds, or what does it mean, does a pooling of funds consist of? And you're looking at that opportunity to braid funds, to work with other networks within your institutions to develop programs of study. So if you're not familiar with braiding funding, that means staying within the required uses of those additional funds, but also looking at what funds can be utilized to support Perkins. So there's another question about there is also some STEM language in the local uses, but STEM does not usually overlap with CTE. Can you explain how to involve STEM in CTE? To be honest, Aubrey, I'm confused as to why science, technology, engineering, and mathematics would not align and be involved or overlap with career and technical education. Those should be working hand in hand together, because STEM classes, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, all do touch on attributes of career and technical education, and effective career and technical education should have attributes of STEM. So I'm going to need just a little bit more on that question to address that, because I do think there should be overlap, and I'm confused as to why there would not be overlap at the local level between the STEM initiatives and career and technical education. The next question would be, can you talk more about local required uses of funds? The career preparation classes. So those can be at both the secondary and post-secondary level. That's going to be part of your local needs assessment. That's going to be part of what the state plan rolls out with. But as the law sees it, they do not distinguish that it has to be at the secondary or post-secondary level, because, to be honest, career preparation classes are valuable at both. If you look at the model for ICAPs IET, part of that model includes career preparation classes. In addition to that, if you look at the use that we have with the Essential Employability Skills Framework, and if you're not familiar with that document, I encourage you to check that out. The Essential Employability Skills Framework was put together, I would say, about 3 years ago, and it really looks at the needs of business and what are those essential employability skills that need to be being taught within the secondary and post-secondary system, both in career and technical education and across the board, because this was developed as part of the Workforce Education Strategic Plan to really outline what are those things that not only help an individual, a student, get hired, but also maintain and complete a job. So the Essential Employability Skills Framework includes personal ethic, work ethic, communication skills, and teamwork. And under those, it includes personal ethic, also includes integrity, respect, perseverance, and positive attitude. Work ethic includes dependability, professionalism, and then communication skills includes active listening and clear communication. Critical thinking is under teamwork, as well as effective and collaborative work. So if you haven't checked that out, I encourage you to do so. Another document that might be helpful for you to look at is the Advisory Committee Guide. That is a partnership for post-secondary education. Those at the secondary level, I know quite a few of you have also looked at this document. It really looks at the purpose of a program advisory committee, the role of the program advisory committee, just giving some guidance. It is not a handbook, it is a guidebook. So it does provide guidance on what are the components that make an effective advisory committee. So I hope that does answer your question. Around career preparation, because I do feel that being both secondary and post-secondary level. There is a question about if FY20 is a transition year, does that mean, and then I don't see the rest of that because there's no. Okay. Are there any other questions, comments? If anyone would like to raise their hand. Okay, there was a couple more questions that have come in. Can you address how Title I interfaces with this? I'm going to assume this you mean Perkins, and Title I you mean adult education. So for the first time in the law, adult education is mentioned as a partner, and so that's important. And I love it, the questions come in, that they just keep bouncing. One second here. And so really the big intersection there, and that's for Dr. Cawthron, is the idea of the ICAPs program. So the Integrated Career and Academic Preparation System is ICAPs. And that is one of the areas where we were looking at transitioning students, curriculum alignment, and we're looking at that population of adult education students are coming into the system. And so the relationship there with adult education, that is how Title I or adult education interfaces with career and technical education. That has been occurring now for about 4 or 5 years within the state. We have had ICAPs programs for 4 years within the state of Illinois. They grew out of the Accelerating Opportunity Initiative that came to the state in 2008. Oh, that's 10 years. And then we're also looking at ways in which the WIOA initiatives, which also outline IET models. IET models in the state of Illinois are ICAPs, so ICAPs is IET and IET is ICAPs within the state of Illinois. That is our addressing of the integrated educational training system. And so that is where that interface happens, where we are assisting and working with career and technical education students that have not received their high school equivalency, and that would be more at the post-secondary level. Next question. The new special populations categories, homeless youth and youth with military families, are these secondary categories or both secondary and post-secondary? Those are both secondary and post-secondary categories. So all partners who should be working in coordination together would be serving those special populations. But yes, you would have the homeless students and your youth of or children of active military are both secondary and post-secondary special populations. Just to be clear, there are no special populations that are only secondary, and there are no special populations that are only post-secondary. They are both. So the question is, if FY20 is a transition year, does this mean the changes do not go into effect until 21? I am going to put ICCB on the spot because that's the transition plan, and that is something that they are working out. So Natasha Allen, do you mind if I unmute you and ask you to address when these changes will all take place? I've unmuted you, Natasha.
Can anyone hear me?
Everyone can hear you.
You guys can hear me? Okay. So for the transition year, we haven't exactly figured out what we're going to do as far as the new special populations and reporting on those and your HIP and your accountability data snapshot worksheet. But be on the lookout for guidance regarding those things.
So I think the specific question was like the special populations and the need for service of those. Will that go into effect for 20 or 21?
So,
or is that something that we're still working out as a state through this process?
I think that's something we're still working out as a state through this process. I'm not entirely sure, and I don't want to give anyone the wrong answer.
That would have been my answer as well, so excellent. Thank you. I'll mute you again now. Any other questions? Okay. We will be downloading the question pane and the question category. So if there are any questions that were not addressed, we can include a Q&A to this webinar as well. If there are any questions that you have, always feel free to contact ICSPS. We are here to assist you. And though this webinar has been riddled with technology difficulties, I'm going to blame this lovely new computer that I have that's not working at all to do that. So if you have any questions, this is my phone number, my email. I do want to share with you our website. Always go there for professional development opportunities. And the last thing I wanted to make you aware of before we close is on June 4th, there will be a special populations symposium where we will be unpacking and focusing on the new special populations and what those look like. We will also be showcasing the effective strategies and practices that have come out of the special populations aspects of the special population support grants that were issued by ICCB and how those looked in the field and what was accomplished by those particular items that were part of that larger program improvement grant strategy. So I do ask you to hold your calendars for June 4th, and we'll be sending out additional information on that. So with that, I'm going to close the webinar. Thank you all so very much for your participation. Again, any questions, concerns, comments, always direct those to ICCB is always here to help, and I'm volunteering them for that. But also ICSPS is here to address anything regarding special populations and professional development. Thank you so much and have a great day.